Here's another problem, how to factor a trinomial equation, except in the last problem that I did, it already equaled 0 for us, so we went ahead and just factored this out. But the problem is it has to equal 0, the equation, in order for it to work, so we can use a zero product property in the end. That's when we took each factor, each set of parentheses, and set it equal to 0. So the idea is if you want this to equal 0, you're going to make it equal 0, but you're going to do it by following the rules. This is what I like to call BS math. BS stands for both sides, despite what your friends and classmates tell you. You subtract 5x on both sides of the equal sign, and you'll get 2x squared minus 13x plus 2 equals, these will cancel out, and you'll have a 9 left over. You're going to use BS math again because you still want this to equal 0. So you'll subtract 9 from both sides. That'll get you 2x squared minus 13x minus 7 equals 0. So we followed the rules and we got what we wanted. Now we have this trinomial equation equals 0. So from here on out, it's the same procedure as before, but I'm going to go ahead and solve anyways. So I'm going to change the color here. The first thing that I would like to do is use the x factor. A times c goes on the top. A is the number in front of x squared, and c is the number without a variable. So a times c, 2 times negative 7, that's going to get me negative 14 on the top. And my b value, negative 13, is on the bottom. So I got to figure out what two numbers multiply to get negative 14 and add to get negative 3. So I'm not quite sure, so I'm just going to go ahead and list the factors of 14 that I know. I know that 2 times 7 is 14, but they don't add or subtract to get negative 13, so that's not going to work. How about 1 and 14? When all else fails, just go back to that. And I think that does work. When we add those up together, if we make the 14 negative, that will add up to be 13, and it still multiplies to get me negative 14, so that works perfectly. So I'm going to go ahead over here and use my box method. Remember, the first term and the last term go in the first box and the last box. So go ahead and write that in. That's 2x squared minus 7. Then the middle term are going to go in the middle boxes, and you have to split them up a certain way. That's where our x factor comes in. So we're going to go ahead and put those in. And we're going to put x's after, so we have negative 14x and then 1x. If you don't want the 1 in front of that x, it doesn't matter. It's not going to change your answer. So now, go ahead and change the color again here. We got to look at the greatest common factors between each one. The greatest common factor between 2x squared and negative 14x is going to give me 2x. X has to go on the outside because x times 2x is going to be 2x squared. Then I have to figure out what number multiplies with 2x to get negative 14x. That's going to be negative 7. Negative 7 times what is going to get me negative 7? Well, if it's unchanged, it's going to be 1. So here's our answer, or so far our answer after we factor it. I'm going to go ahead and write it up here. So we have 2x plus 1 times x minus 7. And don't forget that equals 0 because we made it equal 0 down there. So now comes the easier part. We're using the zero product property. So when we're using the zero product property, we take each factor and we set it equal to 0. So let's go ahead and do that. We have 2x plus 1 equals 0. And then we have x minus 7 equals 0. So I'm going to go ahead and solve for x. You subtract 1 on both sides. That's using our BS math skills. Remember, that stands for both sides math. So we get 2x equals negative 1 when we subtract. Divide both sides by 2. X equals negative 1/2. There is our first answer right there. Same here. We add 7 to both sides. Then we get x equals 7. So these are our final answers. X equals negative 1/2 and x equals 7. So the moral of the story is make sure you remember that before you solve any of these problems, you have to have the equations set equal to 0. And you're going to go ahead and use BS math. You have to combine only the like terms in order to do that.